Although I'm horrible at reading my own work, I'm going to give this a try. I hope you enjoy. Petra slinked down the rocky terrain, following the thumps of the hooves hitting the ground. Frigid air whipped across her face and ruffled her fur. Pushing her lupine limbs forward, she dashed over the narrow cliffs in her path and surged into the dark forest. She wound her way through the trees, all the while keeping her approach stealthy. The heavy thuds against the earth grew closer and louder. The intruder was less than a mile out, but gaining speed. She lunged through the trees and came to a clearing where she skittered to a stop. Stretching her limbs out, she rested her belly on the cold, wet ground. From the vibrations coasting through her body, she detected the weight and strength of the creature. It weighed a little less than a ton. Judging by the sounds of the hoof falls along the narrow passageway, it carried a mighty rider. She lifted her snout to the air and pulled in a deep inhale. Past the scent of Mother Nature's tears, brute testosterone filled her senses. A pirate? It better not be. Growling, she leapt to her paws and darted into the thicket. Using the shadows as cover, she waited with her chest pressed to the ground and her backside in the air, crouched in preparation to attack. It wasn't long before the four-legged machine trampled past her, leaving a trail of circular prints along the muddy path. Mounted atop of a large mechanical horse sat a man shrouded in a scarlet cloak. He glanced back over his shoulder as if he sensed something. Yanking on the metal reins, he drew his transport to a halt. The machine's inner workings screeched in protest as his hoofs slid to a stop. Steam puffed from his nose, mouth, and ears. The bright blue glare in his eyes dimmed. The rider spun the creature around to face the pathway they'd just come galloping through. Large bags protruded from the beast's sides. The items within clanked and chimed. Petra winced at the annoying sound. From what she could perceive, the bags were filled with food, aluminum pots, and other equipment. Neighing, the horse marched in place, causing the pots to clatter more. The horsemaster, who emitted a strong masculine aroma, patted the side of the animal's head, bringing its prancing to a halt. He slipped his hand around the grip of the laser-slinging weapon attached to his thigh. His head did a slow turn from the left, then to the right, and then back to the left again. He was obviously searching for something, though it didn't seem like he knew what that something was. A battle, perhaps? That would be grand. Her glare narrowed as a smile played on her wolfish lips. Suddenly, his head snapped in her direction. His eyes were hidden beneath the shadowy overhang of his blood-red hood. While a matching mask concealed his nose and mouth, the cloak's cape draped over his broad shoulders and back. Slightly tattered, the ends hung off the rear end of the horse. Attached to his chest, a breastplate displayed a fire-breathing dragon symbol. Steel-toed boots clung to his powerful legs and thighs. Her feminine gaze helplessly wandered down his frame. Well, hello, Red Riding Hood. She was no stranger to his kind. He was a hunter, a human gifted with the skills and instincts of an animal. Although he seemed to have no idea she lingered close enough to rip him off of that saddle, his heightened senses had picked up on her presence. This fact alone excited her. Swinging a leg over the saddle, he dismounted. The soles of his boots hit the mud with a splash. He stood there, his glare fixed in her direction, not moving a muscle. Seconds passed, and he remained rooted to the spot like a mighty M. The steady knock against his chest revealed his lack of fear and anxiousness. In contrast to his, Her heartbeat thundered wildly against her breast. What is it about this mortal that shakes me to the core? A gust of wind dashed by and feathered the tail of his cape, exposing a shiny inner lining of the fabric, as well as the ivory hilt strapped to his waist. Wait, a laser shooter on the left, a blade on the right? This man was no ordinary hunter. What was a member of the Legion doing out here so far away from the battlefield? Judging by the color of his cloak, he was a high-ranking officer, a captain to be exact. This gave her pause. He may not be a pillaging pirate, but he was still trespassing on her land, which meant instant death for him. He wouldn't be an easy kill, though, of that she was certain. With his hand still curled around the grip of his shooter, he slowly ambled her way. His boots came down on the muddy ground hard. Splash, splash. Fangs bared, she crouched even lower. He stepped into the clearing where the bright ray from the moonlight peeked through the opening in the branches. Petra's heart shuddered to a halt. Piercing emerald eyes beamed from beneath the edge of the hood. Just a few unruly strands of curly, reddish-brown hair dangled over his brow. Suddenly, she wanted to burst from the shadows. The desire to swipe the caul back from his head and snatch the blood-colored sash from his face made her tremble. She needed to see him, needed to see all of him. Why? His eyes. The sterling green within his irises looked so hauntingly familiar. Still looking about searchingly, he drew the gun from his holster, yet he kept it at his side, pointed downward. I know you're there, somewhere hiding in the darkness. Show yourself. Accented in a faint brogue, his deep, raspy timbre sent a chill dashing through her body. Fangs clenched. She suppressed a growl and eased backwards, not because she feared him, but because she feared herself. In this form, a man holding a weapon was nothing more than prey to her. She stayed low, hoping he would abandon his need to hunt the unknown before her instincts compelled her to do something she might regret. Turn around and walk away, horse master. An alert chimed from his cyborg horse. With his eyes flashing red, the creature took a step toward its rider, lowering its head and snorting out steam. Disregarding his transport, the hunter stood rigid and robust, focused on the unseen. His muscles bulged against the chain-linked armor beneath his hood's cape. The moonlight created a halo around him, giving him the aura of a mythical dream rather than a man. His stare was unfaltering. Although he couldn't see her, his gaze seemed to bore right into her soul. The mare marched closer and nudged him in the arm, neighing with impatience. All right, girl, he huffed, shoving the weapon back into his holster. Hoped I'd get a little action tonight, but I guess I've lingered here long enough. He turned away, making his cape billow about, and climbed back onto the saddle with a fluid motion. Mounted with his head held high, he snapped the reins. His mechanical companion bucked into action, spun around, and took off like a bullet deeper into her territory, leaving a spray of wet earth flaring out in his wake. Petra crept from the shadows and watched the strangers stretch the distance between them. Her heart fluttered in anxiousness. Well, who are you, Red Riding Hood? Eager to face the rider again, she dug her paws into the muddy trail and raced after him. This was a reading from my book, Crimson Memories, a dystopian retelling of Red Riding Hood. Thanks for listening.